We are rolling.
All right. Well, everybody, welcome to Beers with Engineers, session 21, last one of 2023, which is kind of crazy to think about. We're really excited to be with you guys all here today. It's always like getting together to hang out with my friends. So appreciate you guys all joining us. So we'll kick off again, as always, with the safe harbor statement, right? We talk about a lot of stuff in here. Some of it may or may not be released yet. Some of it may be on a roadmap. Some of it might not ever come to fruition. So don't make any stock purchasing decisions based on anything we say here. Leave it here, all that fun stuff. So we always have a very informal agenda here. We'll just kind of walk through this bit by bit today. And we'll kick it off with why are we here and what's the goal of Beers with Engineers. So why did we start Beers with Engineers? It was really, Will and I got together and thought, not only does not a lot of people know that ServiceNow has any sort of cloud native capabilities, but what we found was that as we started talking more and more customers about it, they all kind of felt like they were alone on this like road towards how do we integrate all of this stuff. And so felt like it's a good idea to build a community together of similar customers dealing with similar problems and providing valuable content around what are the capabilities and give people an opportunity to have discussions around what they're doing, what's working, what's not working, what the struggles are. So that's why we're here. So who we are. I am the manager of the enterprise applications team here at DRW. I once upon a time was a ServiceNow employee. I have joined the dark side as a customer, and honestly, really, really enjoying it. I am an old school nerd from way, way, way back in the day. And I always joke that if it's got a 1 or a 0 in it, I've probably managed it at some point in my career. I was actually just thinking about this the other day. The first time I learned hexadecimal was actually to hack a Dungeons and Dragons video game so that I could have max stats. That's old school. So I am not going to be drinking a beer today because I'm still not feeling 100%, but I am drinking water to try and help counteract that. So I love tech. I love to solve problems with tech, and I love spending time with my family, playing a bunch of board games, and of course, training jujitsu as much as I can get away with. Will?
Thanks, sir. Hey, everybody. Will Hallam, advisory solution architect, focusing on ITOM at ServiceNow. Been in technology for a good while, and really focusing lately on automation, especially in the cloud native arena. Get a lot of satisfaction out of automating repetitive tasks. In my spare time, I like to hang out with my family. I play some pickup hockey and video games to pass the time. Today, I will be drinking a Juice Jolt Extra Juicy IPA from Southern Tier Brewing Company. And also with us today, we have a guest speaker, a teammate of mine. Tarane, would you like to give a brief intro?
Sure. Thanks for having me today. My name is Tarane Parvarish, and I'm a solution consultant with ServiceNow Cloud Observability team. I joined a little over a year ago. I'm actually taking the opposite of what Mike mentioned, that I was at the customer before, and then I joined ServiceNow a year ago, and it's been great to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for coming to talk to us today about cloud observability logs.
Say that
and so
fast.
Yeah, exactly. So just to kind of lead off into what Tarane is going to go into, we've had cloud observability, formerly called Lightstep, for a while. We did a session on that a few months ago. And so now what this is bringing to the table is the ability to take the same easy to set up ingestion methods that we had in place for metrics and traces, and had the capability to take log data and add that to the mix as well. So I will release my share and hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you. Let me know if you can see my desktop now. Awesome.
Looks good.
Good. Okay, so as I said, my name is Tarane. I'm happy to be here. We will be talking about logging with ServiceNow Cloud Observability today. Who loves going through slides? But I do have some slides to go through first. I just want to make sure that everybody here is on the same page before we jump into a demo that I will have at the end of the session. I don't have 25 slides or so. It's just 8 slides, I think, to go through, and then we will jump into a demo. So let's just talk about, like, you know, what is the big deal with logs? Logs are everywhere. I'm sure if you're in technology, you've already heard about logs or working with them on a daily basis. They're emitted by applications and infrastructure and help to have context regarding application performance. You might have heard about the 3 pillars of observability, which are logs, metric, traces, that help us understand the root cause and underlying dynamics of the issues. So logs are one of the important part of that 3 pillars. And in addition, they are the most basic form of telemetry data, which you don't need to have any, you know, code changes to get the value out of that. Let's talk about, or start actually from how logs are being collected. You know, if you're in technology, you might have already known this, but I have just a slide to talk about how they're being collected. Every device and application in the network, it generates log data. Those logs get written into a log file, into a disk, and then the logging agent, which will be installed on the machine, will read the log file and disk and sends it to your choice of, you know, logging provider. The agent that is installed in the machine not only collects and filters the log, but it also parses the logs and converts them into the formats before they're being forwarded to the logging provider, which I will talk about the agent in the next slide or two. Similarly, the architecture for cloud native style is almost the same, except that the logging agent is probably outside of your cloud provider. An example of an open source logging agent is OpenTelemetry Collector, or, you know, some customers are using Vector, but we also have some vendor specific logging agent, such as, you know, Datadog agent, which is proprietary to that vendor specifically. But if you're using open source, such as, you know, OpenTelemetry collectors, you would be able to send your logs to any logging provider of your choice. So you do that one time, and then you would be able to ship logs to any provider that you want. So once you collect the logs, you can use the logging agent to convert them to the format that is acceptable by the logging provider. In the case of Hotel, you will be using Hotel Collector to receive logs, make some modifications, and then export them as OTLP format, and in our case, to send it to ServiceNow Cloud Observability logging. Right now, we accept OTLP format, Elasticsearch, and also Datadog agent format. So if you already have these in place, it's just a matter of, you know, 5-10 minutes to ship logs to us, which makes it easy to start with. If you're in the beginning of your observability journey and you want to start from somewhere, usually we find that it's easy to, you know, start a POC with logs and then just go from there. So just looking inside the agent here, as we talked about, the logs are being written into the log file, and then agent is basically just you can think of it as a pipeline that it receives the data, it processes the data, and then it exports it to a logging provider. So basically helping you out on getting the logs from the system, do some processes. Usually it's resource enrichment or changing the parsing to change it to the fields that would be useful for your business. Do sampling if you have a lot of data. Usually we see customers do 20%, 30% sampling rather than keeping everything in the system, and do some modifications to it before exporting it to log providers. Usually it makes it easy for your log provider ones to accept it, and also being able to have the fields in a structured way rather than being unstructured.
And if I remember correctly, you can use that capability to do, for example, you could take a certain regex that might contain like a social security number or some other personal identification information, and mask it or replace it before sending the rest of the log over to Cloud Observability, right?
Exactly. You can do so many things with, sampling, to your point, like modifications. If you want to mask data, usually if there's some compliance, I've worked with customers during the POCs that they're due to compliance regulatory is in place, they were not able to send us customer IDs, like detailed information about customers. That is something that will happen in the agent layer, that you don't want those logs to be shipped to the provider. But you can also do enrichment to the resources, modifications to help on basically what your business is looking for, to make sure that the logs are being valuable during your incident resolution and investigation. Cool. So moving along, next slide. So now that we have a baseline of how logs are being generated and collected, let's talk about our approach and ServiceNow's Cloud Observability logging offering. Safe Harbor, I think Mike went through that, but it doesn't hurt to have a second one, just to make sure that things that we are talking about might be forward-looking. So I have this slide. I wanted to talk about what we generally hear from customers regarding challenges with logs are, one, that businesses, and especially the big ones, they generate large amount of data daily that ranges from 10, 15 terabytes of logs per day to we also had cases for 200 terabytes a day and more. So sorting logs becomes very expensive. Storing logs becomes very expensive with new applications being added every day, the complexity of cloud native applications, as well as compliance and regulatory requirements to keep the logs for a longer period of time. On the other hand, also to make data manageable, we see customers have to make a decision between either limiting the data that are being stored or reducing the retention period so that it's as short as a few days or few weeks. However, this can make this difficult to identify security issues in modern architectures like microservices and containers, with multiple cloud providers and such. The second challenge is also the scalability without compromising performance and search experience for end users. We hear this a lot from customers that they have large amount of data, they want to search around it, and it takes them a lot of time to even just for the query to respond. So we build a solution that is, one, cost effective, and then also performant to address both of these challenges. And the third one is, on top of everything, we also added a third element as a cherry on top, to have everything included as part of one ecosystem in ServiceNow. So you have the best world of observability solution with logs, metrics, traces, in addition to your ITSM for incident management and event management with AIOps capabilities for advanced alerting. So everything is part of this ecosystem of ServiceNow, so that you can have better correlation, better integration between different systems that will make the investigation, and it will reduce your MTTR. And customers often ask us how we keep our cost low, and the answer is logging storage is built on a modern architecture that we have at ServiceNow, which is purpose-built to be efficient and cost-effective. And we built this from scratch. So if you look at the left diagram for legacy systems, oftentimes the compute and storage are combined. That will impact the performance. So you have a VM and storage that are in the same machine. They do the data ingestion, data storage, processing, query handling, everything is in one. However, in our modern architecture, we separate ingestion from the storage and from queries in different tiers. So basically, this will give us the opportunity to have those independently scalable. As long as you have lots of data, you can store those in object storage for cold storage retention. So we are not compromising performance for that. And I had POCs that people will wow people with our performance of the UI with lots of data that they're sending us. And a little bit of history about our logging solution, it used to be Era Software, founded by Todd Person, who joined us through Era acquisition back in 2022 with his team, which is right around the time that I joined also ServiceNow. And it's been absolutely amazing to see how fast our engineering team have been able to integrate Era into ServiceNow Cloud Observability in such a short period of time, and make it available for commercial use. So we have a great team of engineers and leaders who know the market really well, and they listen to our customers to tailor our products based on their needs. Let me know if there are any questions that we can answer. I know that I might be going a little bit fast here.
Yeah, as always, everybody's invited. Don't be shy. Feel free to shoot questions into the Q&A or just come off mute and shout them out as you prefer.
Agreed.
Awesome, cool. So I wanted to talk about a little bit about hot storage, cold storage. I'm not sure if everybody is familiar with these terms, but hot storage is basically data is immediately available, it's queryable. Think of it as like living in a pod. You have access to the data. Cold storage, it allows customers to keep the data for longer period of time, and we use object storage to store very compressed data, which is significantly cheaper. But the downside is it's not available for search and query right away. So if you're keeping older data in cold storage and, let's say there's a security breach and you want to look into the data that is not in your hot storage timeframe, hence it's moved to cold storage, we have a feature that's called rehydration. You might have heard other vendors also have the same capability, but our rehydration capability is available through UI. So you basically just select the time frame that you want to bring back the data. And you can bring the data back from cold storage to hot storage, which for us is just moving the data. So no indexing involved, no extra charges for that. You can just move your data to hot storage, do your investigation, potentially create a notebook or, dashboards for anything that you want to look into that data, and then release the data back to cold storage when you're done. There are also events such as, we work with customers that during the events like Black Friday or Super Bowl, which they had before, and they have the data from like a year ago. And during those events, usually there's a big surge of usage that customers want to analyze the logs or metrics from a year ago and predict what resources they would need to be prepared for this time. So this is a great example of, you would be able to, based on your retention policy, you would be able to bring back those logs if you've been saving those logs for let's say a year or so. In addition, there's another case also for PCI compliancy. Sometimes, enterprises would like to keep the data for a longer period of time, 90 days or even a year. And those cases are where you would be able to store your data in cold storage and don't pay a lot of money for that versus a hot storage. So being able to benefit from cost reduction and the flexibility to access old logs would be really beneficial with cold storage and rehydration. And one thing to point out that I have it in this slide is for us, rehydration is fast and efficient. What I have here, it says, the search for or to bring back 1 terabytes of data from cold storage, it takes 12 minutes. But I have to point out that this 1 terabytes of data is highly compressed data. So you can think about it as if 3 terabytes of uncompressed data. If you want to bring it back, it's just going to take a couple of minutes for you.
And the balance, both the balance of hot and cold, as far as how much hot storage versus cold storage is provisioned or entitled, plus the retention, that can be adjusted based on customer need. And I believe it's available at both within the existing cloud observability kind of taxonomy. It's available both at the organizational level, which is generally like your top level organizational container, or at the individual project level. And the project is kind of the basic swim lane for a set of observability data. And so aligning to both of those, you can get it customized as far as how long it's retained and how much is hot and how much is cold.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Hey, just quickly to jump in, there's a couple of questions in the Q&A. We want to hit those really fast.
Yeah, let's do that. So let's see. Durga is asking if we have an existing logging solution in place, how easy or complex is it to share the logs with ServiceNow Observability? Yeah, I would say it should be relatively straightforward based on the fact that we emulate the Elastic and Datadog APIs as well as the native OpenTelemetry. What would you think?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Well, as you mentioned, if you already have a logging solution in place, there's a good chance that you're using a logging agent, right? If in the case of Datadog, if you're using a Datadog agent, or we see customers using, Vector, FluentD, FluentBit, you would be able to just use those existing logging agents and send it to us. Our recommendation is using OpenTelemetry because you will adhere to the semantics of OpenTelemetry from log attributes and fields and metadata that it has. So it just makes it easier to accept those logs as structured. But even if you don't have OpenTelemetry collector and for some reason you're not able to stand that up, or if you even don't want to do a lot for sending the logs, if you already have a logging solution in place, I would say it's very easy. We have the configuration. Also, the documentation is in our website regarding the configuration that we provide for each of these types of agents to be able to just send the data to us.
I did include a link to our documentation page that talks about the different log integrations and how to configure to send logs from existing logging solutions into cloud observability. So that link will be available in the slides that go out with our wrap-up email as well. Sorry, go ahead.
In addition to that question, is that same logic applicable for metrics and traces as well? If we have an existing APM agent solution, is that metrics and traces can flow through the observability without adopting the OTel?
Yeah, for metrics and traces is a little bit different. If you're talking about, let's focus on metrics first. If you're using AWS and Azure, we already have integration for almost everything. Like you can integrate into CloudWatch, and then you would be able to send us all of the metrics that you have. Same thing for Azure. If you're using Azure Monitor, we have integration. So a lot of integrations, and we have the list of all of the integrations that we have for metrics in our documentation. As long as you have, we support these integrations, you would be able to send the metrics in the same way. And for traces, we don't have, for ServiceNow Cloud Observability, the main way that we accept traces are through OpenTelemetry. So we don't have any proprietary agents. It depends on, we have some customers using Jaeger, some customers using, Prometheus and such. So as long as if you're using OpenTelemetry, you would be able to send us your traces. For other, I'm not sure if you have anything in mind, and I don't think we want to go deeper here or there, but traces, I would say it's if you are not using Hotel, then that would be a conversation for us to see if we can, help you out to stand up a collector, to change to use the OpenTelemetry collector, to change your format to OTLP, because that's the way that we will accept it. But this is what we've seen. The organization and enterprises are, mostly they're going into OpenTelemetry, and this is a method that we have.
Yeah, and that kind of goes along with the theme that we've been hearing, which is when it comes to those 3 pillars of observability, logs are kind of the easiest to gather, right? Because they're already there. You just got to send them somewhere. And then comes metrics, and then comes traces. So there's definitely that kind of climbing level of difficulty when it comes to those 3 pieces of observability data. I can just add from some stuff that I've been doing just in my lab that a tool like Cribble, for example, can in theory take something that's not OpenTelemetry and turn it into something that can be delivered to an OpenTelemetry endpoint. So even if you've got kind of more proprietary data, it's not out of the question. It's just a question of how much effort is involved to put it into a form that can be ingested by OpenTelemetry. If you've already got OTel instrumentation out there, that's obviously the easiest to you can just fork off a copy of that, send it to ServiceNow Cloud Observability, and you're off to the races. And then kind of as you back away from that, it just kind of ratchets up what it would take to make it happen.
Is there any roadmap at least to delink that from OTel agents for traces? Because right now we have an existing APM agent solution, but it is not coexisting with the OTel agents, and there is a challenges in making coexist and have the traces separated.
So right now, the other thing that we have is we also accept traces from a Datadog agent, but except from that, I'm not aware of anything that we have in the roadmap for now. And as I said, if there are cases for customers that they're looking to see if they can use their current agents to use us as traces, we can definitely involve our architecture to help you out. But the main remains the OpenTelemetry for now.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Cool. Good
Okay,
question.
one more question. Where are logs stored? Is this not built on public cloud? You're running custom DBs.
It is. It's in public cloud. So the logs are stored in GCP, and obviously it's a SaaS solution that we offer. So there's no installation and on-prem and such. I hope that
It
answers.
basically lives everywhere that cloud observability. It's part of cloud observability, right? So wherever the formerly Lightstep, now ServiceNow Cloud Observability is hosted, that's where the log facility is also hosted, right?
Yes, that's right. And Will, I think you were mentioning something regarding hot and cold retention from pricing point of view. Just had the slide to highlight that our pricing is only based on ingest and hot and cold retention. So to your point, the hot and cold retention are separate, and you can configure that. So when we are dealing with contract with customers, we usually ask about their requirement regarding how much they want to keep the data in hot versus cold retention. Obviously, usually we see 3, 7, 10 days for hot retention, because that's where how much time you would need to do your investigation. But for any PCI requirements or compliance requirements and such, or the cases that I mentioned regarding Black Friday big events, you might need to required to use cold storage to keep the data for longer time. But we don't have any limits or charges on, how many queries you're running, how much it's taking for queries to run, the cold storage retrieval, how much data you're bringing back to hot storage, and also number of alerts. And the reason I'm bringing these up are because we have some vendors that are charging for these. I just want to make sure that people understand that the pricing is solely based on ingest and hot and cold retention.
Awesome.
And I think that was it for slides. Before we jump into the demo, I just want to make sure if there are any questions we can answer. If not, we can.
Q&A is clear.
Yep.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, so I hope you can see this environment that I'm showing. This is our logging page. I'm in Cloud Observability environment, which we have service directory if you're sending services and such. We have also notebooks, similar to notebooks that you've seen probably in other providers regarding you would be able to do your investigation. Obviously, we are not going to touch on those today. I'm just going to touch on the log section that we have for the platform. There are multiple areas that you can do search. You can see on the left side, these are all the fields that are coming in the logs. So basically, you use the collector or your agent to identify which fields you want to include in your logs. If the logs are coming in as structured, then you would be able to capture these, such as, if you're using OpenTelemetry collector, these all will come through OpenTelemetry semantics. But also if you want to add any custom field, like, customer ID or anything that would be helpful for your business, then that's where you would be able to just see the list of all of the fields that are here. You can search based on these fields. Let's say, I'm looking for a service name. And then here I can say I want to include or exclude this one, or search on the field names also. And as you can see, the filtering is so fast. Obviously, this is my demo environment. I don't have much, a lot of data on it. But the same experiences as if you're sending 10, 15 terabytes of data every day. And then we also have free text search also on top. So if you want to look into errors, it looks into, in the body. And these are the log lines that we have here. If you click on one of these log lines, it will bring you the information regarding the fields. That's similar to what you see here, but these are also clickable. So you would be able to, for some of these that we are able to filter, you can say show matching, hide matching, or add them to the color column as this in the table. And then you can, just click on it and filter any of the logs based on this as well. We also have span ID, and you can see that span ID and trace ID is also included as part of the log. So this is if you want to have correlation between your logs and traces, this is how you would do that. You would include your span ID and trace ID as part of your logging instrumentation to send it over. So we will correlate those traces also for where there's a logs. And you will see that this open linked trace will become enabled. If there's no tracing available for it, this would be disabled. And if I click on this one, it will bring me the actual trace. I know that this would be very helpful during investigation. If you're seeing something in logs and you want to see exactly what's happening, you can go to the span. You see that the span has errors. And then, this is showing that the trace has 15 spans. And if I go through these spans, it provides me more information regarding what's going on with this piece of application or service for the issues that are happening, so that you can figure things out faster. And I have this one, I think it will provide more information. So for this span, it says, the resource is exhausted. So you will have the logs here as well to provide you more information. I can also jump back to the logs. So let's say I start with tracing for my investigation and I want to see the logs to provide me more context surrounding what the issue is. I can also just say view logs, and then I would be able to just jump into the exact logs for that period of time. You notice that it brings just a couple of log lines for that, but let's say you want to see these logs in context. So I will just say see in context, and it will show all of the logs before and after this event also. So basically, around that time frame, you're able to see before and after what has happened in the logs to be able to provide you more information. And then what else I can show you here? The raw logs here also, you can see how the fields are coming in from the logs that are becoming these fields that you can query, and you can also search based on through those. Obviously, you can identify which columns you want to see based on the data that is coming in and the information for those. We also have live tail, which you want to see the logs as they're coming in. Sometimes during the investigation, you want to have the live logs that are coming in, and this is the option that you would be able to see those information. Or if you want to search based on specific, like 60-minute, last 60 minutes, or 4 hours, or a custom window to filter based on the logs, this is how you would use those.
Got a couple questions in the Q&A. One from an anonymous attendee who says, keeping the OTel context in mind, why would I relate logs to spans versus using span events?
Logs to spans versus span events. I'm not sure what do you mean by span events, but the correlation between logs and spans usually, sometimes, you get a lot of information from traces and spans, but sometimes there are, authentication issues sometimes that are not. If you're not able to see those in traces, logs might provide more context or additional context around like when this happened. Usually, since it's based on timeline, logs might provide more information regarding, did I start seeing, some warnings before this issue happened, versus the spans and traces would help you identify the root cause of the issue.
There's probably a bit of kind of economy at work as well, right? Because I'm guessing in order to generate a span event, you'd have to include that in your instrumentation, that for this span, I want to generate an event. It's almost like the traditional kind of monitoring use case versus something like log analytics, where for traditional monitoring, you have to know what you're looking for. You have to know where things might go wrong. Whereas if you just adopt a standard log line format that includes the span and trace ID, you don't necessarily have to be prescient in predicting where things might go wrong and adding an event around where the error may occur, right? You can just have it standardized in your log format, and then wherever the error occurs, if it was within a span, if your logging standard says if there's a span in play, put the ID in the log line, then and it's kind of, that like all things in IT, there's multiple ways to go about it, and it's more just what's appropriate and most useful for your particular situation, I would think.
Yeah, I think you're spot on also. And as I'm looking for span events, I get what they're saying. Sometimes this information shows up here, and for some of these, you don't see the span events here. So I think it's just additional information through logs that you would be able to identify versus what I can see here. And as I said, traces will provide you the root cause of the issue and how, what's going on, versus the logs. Usually there's a, timeline for when things started going south and what's going on with the with the system, or if there's any additional stuff that's happening. But usually, yeah, the traces provide more information for you.
Well, and the nice thing is with this scenario is you have all three in one tool. So you don't have to pivot, even if it is, perhaps there were a multitude of signals, there were span events, and there were log entries. And in this environment, you can see all of those juxtaposed with each other, and you don't have to just constantly swivel or tab switch between different tools to kind of correlate those separate sources. It brings it all together in one place, which, thinking back to my days as a customer, I would have found pretty darn useful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's you're absolutely right regarding, we do the correlation in the platform, so you don't have to go different sections of the platform to figure that out. The reason we have logs is, we know that some people would like to just go directly to logs and start doing their search regarding, errors and what's happening and such. But for the rest of it, you see that there's no, in the platform, we don't have different section for traces, metrics separately. What you will see is service directory that will list all of the services, but we also have dashboards that you can have all telemetry data in one place. And we have query language, unified query language that, we have builders that you can, I can actually show you an example of that, you can use either logs, metric traces to basically instrument, have the dashboards and graphs however you want to do that. Either you can use the builder, or you can use the editor if you're more expert on writing queries. But this just makes it easy. You can just say, I'm looking for all telemetry data, or I'm looking for metrics, traces, or logs separately. But yeah, the nice thing about it is you can have everything into one dashboard. I think this one specifically is production service for logs. And if you're looking at service logs by services, and errors by service logs, you can just click on this one and then say search logs, and it will take you to the UI that we saw for logs. So basically, from any dashboards, you can just go to metrics, logs, traces, which, to your point, it does a correlation together to bring you the information and ultimately reduce your MTTR regarding what's going on in your system.
If I remember correctly, we have our own universal query language that we use for all of this. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. It's called Unified Query Builder and Unified Query Language. And this is how it looks like. So, you would be able to choose what telemetry data you're looking for. Is it metrics, traces, or logs? Or I don't know, I'm just going to choose, all telemetry. And then you would be able to say, for metrics, it will bring you all of the metrics you can choose from. You can filter them, aggregate them, group them by, or add a formula that you want. So there are multiple ways that you can slice and dice the data however you want, whether it's metrics, traces, or logs. So there's correlation between these in the backend. But we also have editor that, if you're familiar with our query language, then you would be able to write more sophisticated and complex queries.
We also allow you to define these in Terraform. So there's a Terraform provider for cloud observability. So you can actually, if you're a very DevOps and CI/CD driven shop, you can actually define all of these dashboards and queries within cloud observability in code in Terraform, and then use the Terraform provider to provision them into your environment, which I thought was a pretty cool feature.
Yep.
Let's see, another question in the Q&A. Matt Morris is asking us a very important question. How do I get my cloud observability project opted in to use the log capability?
So I'm not sure if you're a ServiceNow customer, but ServiceNow Cloud Observability entitlement is separate from, if you have ITOM or ITSM. So basically, with licensing, you have to have licensing for Service Cloud Observability to be able to use this one.
So it would be kind of talk to your account team to get, yeah.
Yes, there are ways. If you're using ITOM and you have discovery license, we have OpenTelemetry SGC that is part of your ITOM license. So you would be able to send the information through Cloud Observability to ServiceNow if you want to use it for improving your CMDB with cloud native CIs. Use it for ServiceNow alerting and event management. That is included in your ITOM discovery entitlement, but you won't be able to use the service Cloud Observability UI that that I'm showing.
Okay, so the kind of built-in Cloud Observability entitlement you get with ITOM is just to use with, it's basically just to use with the SG connector, and it doesn't include logs. So you need an actual Cloud Observability entitlement in order to turn on the logging capability. Is that?
Yes, that's true.
But if they already have that, is this included, or is this I'm sure it's an additional cost based on the volume and size and the pricing that we were discussing earlier?
Yes, exactly. So for metrics, it depends on how many metrics you have, what is the retention policy that you want to have for metrics. For traces, it's the same retention policy, how much data volume would be for your traces. And then logs, we talked about retention for hot and cold. So each of these, they have different subscription units.
Cool. And just a little plug, we did SGC Hotel session a while back. So if anybody's interested, you can go look that up on the YouTube channel. We got pretty deep on it. That
is true. We're covering all the observability topics here at Beers with Engineers. One thing I can imagine my ServiceNow customers asking, so we've had a health log analytics offering for a while. At some point, are we going to provide a way to send things from this facility into HLA?
Yes, there are very exciting stuff happening regarding connecting HLA to Cloud Observability logging, specifically to be able to use Cloud Observability as your log management tool, and then ship those logs to HLA for health log analytics, for basically the AIOps on your logging. I've seen demos. It looks great regarding, how you will set things up. It's just click of a button, and then you would be able to ship the logs to HLA. But I believe it's going to be available in February timeframe. The first release is going to come out in February. So we are very excited about that. We have a lot of good stuff happening in the roadmap, which we've been working on. So we'll have more updates. Maybe in January, February timeframe, we can talk about that too.
Excellent.
That'll be huge. Yeah.
Yeah. And is that, do you know, is that going to also still keep the mid server kind of in the middle, the way HLA works today? Is that going to send it directly to the back end?
Yeah, no mid server. That's what we've been working on, to be able to have the direct connection. So it basically, what you need to provide is your ServiceNow instance and the credential for your ServiceNow instance. And then the logs, as long as you have it in ServiceNow Cloud Ops, the connection would be direct connection, no mid server, nothing else is needed.
Oh, wow. That's huge.
Yeah, that's going to be a big win.
Yes.
Looking forward to hearing more about that.
Sure.
Okay. Let's see. Any other questions? The Q&A is clear at the moment. Anything else on observability logs? No? All right. Awesome. All right. Well, I guess we'll close out our recording, and then we'll shift into our open forum segment of the program. Taraneh, thank you so much for coming and showing us the Cloud Observability. One of these days, I'll be able to get that word the first time. Cloud Observability logs. Greatly appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Hopefully it's been valuable for audience, and let us know if you have any questions.
Perfect.